So yeah, I'm not really great at reading scripts, so sorry if I mess up. But hi, this is a series I'm gonna do where I take random characters from Adventure Camp and Total Drama, and basically randomize the cast to make basically a whole different timeline for Total Drama and Adventure Camp. If you haven't seen Total Drama or Adventure Camp, then I don't know why you're watching this, but you should probably watch those first so you know how those characters act and why I write them this way. Thanks to Musical Individual for giving me the idea to make this. He has three videos on it already. So yeah, um, I landed on this cast, and yeah, I also tried to randomize the hosts, but I still landed on Kristen Chef. So yeah, we still have Kristen Chef. Okay, the first episode would begin with Chris doing the same intro as he did in canon, but this time he has an intern, Oliver, and Chris would get a notification saying that someone has decided to quit the show. So he would just sigh and let Oliver compete. Next, Hunter would show up and say hi to Oliver, and generally just not really doing much since there's only two people. Next, Rhea and Julia would arrive. Julia would be acting super nice, but really annoyed when she has to put away all her phones. Rhea would tell her just to calm down, and she would say okay with a twitch in her eye. Then Millie would show up, saying how she wants to study the youth of today, which Chris just shrugs at. Next, Tess would arrive, and when Hunter tries to talk to her, she just tells him to leave her alone, which he's bummed about, but he says alright. Next, next Trent would show up, and he would also say hi to Tess, and she would just say hi and to leave her alone, and then he just agrees, saying see you later. He walks up to Hunter, who then glares at him. He has the first confessional saying that Hunter seems kind of hostile, but Tess seems cool. MK would arrive and wouldn't really have any notable interactions. I think she would kind of just be trying to blend into the background since that's kind of her strategy. Noah would get there next, talking about his allergies and just being generally annoying and sarcastic. Jake would show up next and not really do anything worthwhile yet because this is just in introductions. Like, not everyone's going to have something super special. Will would show up and be pretty chill and normal, but he would complain about it not being a five-star resort, like it was said. Heather would then arrive and glare at everyone, making Will gulp. Sean would arrive and get scared, asking Hunter if he's a zombie, which he finds super offensive. Tom would show up trying to avoid people, but then he'd bump into Jake, and Jake would blush. Dan would arrive and not talk to anyone because he's Dan and he has no personality. Priya would show up next doing a front flip, saying that she's prepared and her parents have trained her, and that she is going to win. Ellie would show up and talk to Jake a bit, and that's really it. She wouldn't have anyone else to talk to, really. Rosa Maria would then show up and say hi to everyone, then send to Rhea saying hi, and that she thinks she's seen Rhea somewhere. Rhea says that she's been in a couple of movies, and then adds in the background. Rosa says that's cool and that she must be talented. Rhea smiles warmly, saying thanks. Scarlett then arrived next, saying that she's better than anyone else, and refuses when anyone tries to speak with her. Then Anne Maria would show up, putting loads of hairspray in her hair. And that's really it. Next, Leonard arrived to most people's mockery. Z would arrive last and just be a chill guy. The Bass would be Anne Maria, Leonard, Scarlett, MK, Tom, Jake, Will, Julia, Z, Oliver, and Ellie. The Gophers would have Trent, Tess, Hunter, Rosemaria, Rhea, Dan, Sean, Noah, Priya, Millie, and Heather. Episode 1. This episode would start with the two teams on the cliff, and I think on the Bass, Leonard, Will, and Oliver wouldn't jump. Oliver was shown to have PTSD in the first challenge, Will's whole character is being scared, and I think Leonard would trip over his cloak and fall off the mountain, but not to like the water place, like kind of the escalator that DJ walked down. And I think on the Gophers, everyone would jump. So, and I think they would win with the advantage that they got. The Bass would be talking, and Jake and Tom would be bonding pretty quickly and would form a friendship. Julie would be making friends with Anne Maria, and Anne Maria thinks that she's secretly in control of Julia. Z is just a chill like usual, and Ellie would sit next to Tom and Jake since she feels pretty alone on her team, and these two seem pretty accepting. Leonard would be sitting alone due to being a weirdo, and Oliver and Will would be eating together because why not? Scarlett wouldn't really be talking to anyone, and she'd just be acting like she's better than everyone, and MK would just be eating like normal. On the Gophers, Noah and Dan would start talking, and Noah says Dan isn't such a bad guy and he seems cool. Priya and Millie would start a friendship alliance due to Priya not having friends and Millie just wanting an alliance. Trent would sit away from Tess due to her telling him to leave her alone, but Hunter would still try to talk to her, and to Trent and Hunter's surprise, Tess just walks over to Trent and says she still doesn't want to talk to him, but she just doesn't want to sit next to Hunter. Hunter would have a confessional saying that Trent is such an asshole and that he liked Tess first. Rosemaria and Rhea would be talking and end up forming an alliance. Jonathan would just be alone quivering from zombies, and due to not having Jasmine or Dave as supporting characters for him, um, and yeah, sorry, and Heather would be sitting near Millie and Priya. During the elimination, Oliver would get out. I think that people would view him as more worthless than Leonard due to him not even trying and Leonard actually trying. Leonard would still get like 2 or 3 votes. In episode 3, the feast and run would still happen, but the main part, of course, is always the wake-thon. Hunter would still be trying to talk to Tess, and she would just ask him why he always feels the need to talk to her. He just says that he thinks she's really cool, and she would blush a bit, saying thanks, and then immediately stop realizing what she's doing, going straight back to brooding, saying, well, that's fine, but you can leave now. Then Trent would also try to talk to her, but she would be annoyed with him like Hunter earlier, but when she tells him to stop talking to her instead of leaving, he just sits next to her, and then when she falls asleep, her head lands on Trent's shoulder. Then Trent falls asleep, laying his head on hers. Hunter would see this and scoff, having another confessional, just rolling his eyes. In the episode, Heather would form an alliance with Priya and Millie, and they would both accept due to wanting an alliance and Heather being a pretty strong player on their team. Leonard would be annoying everyone with his magic spells, and they would end up putting everyone to sleep, losing the challenge, and yeah, Leonard is out in a 9. So, in Dodgeball, I'm not going to go over each episode or each round by round because that's just I've done it before and it didn't make sense and it was super hard to do. But I think Scarlett and Noah would both be saying the whole I shouldn't participate and being generally annoying. But I think what I was talking about earlier, I'm just gonna go on general strength. And the best have Tom and maybe Julia and Anne Maria. Those other two depend. But then on the Gophers, I think Hunter, Priya, Sean, and maybe Rosemaria would dominate the challenge, winning immunity again. And yeah, Scarlett gets out due to her own ego. So yeah, this was a shorter episode, but I just didn't want to go round by round because that is like really annoying to do. Okay, so in the talent show, the people going for the bass would be Anne Maria, Julia, and Ellie. I'm copying from a musical individual because I don't have anything to go off of. Ellie's hula hooping talent would get a 7. Joy's baton twirling would get an 8. And Anne Maria's singing would be so terrible that they'd get a 0. Trent would get a 9 singing a song about Tess, which Hunter is furious about and stands up, but Tess blushes while he's singing it. But then right after, Heather would read Tess's diary and say how she's shorted into 2 tall guys with black hair, and she doesn't know what to do. Hunter would be hyped while she's reading this, but Trent would stand up calling Heather a jerk. Heather would get a 7 out of 10 due to stirring up a lot of drama, and Priya would do some flip and get a 5. And in a 19-5, the Gophers win yet again, and the Bass would vote Anne Maria due to her losing the challenge for them. Julie, in confessional, would say, "Finally, my quote-unquote bestie is gone," revealing her malice nature to the viewer. In the Going Out in the Wild episode, the Gophers would be super confident that they would win since they've won every other challenge, and then Sean would hear noises and run away to find the zombie. But then he finds himself in a cave and stays there throughout the night. Afterwards, everyone would set up camp, no one really knowing that Sean is gone. Hunter talks to Tess, but she avoids both him and Trent due to being embarrassed about the diary. Trent and Hunter would both call Heather a jerk, and she would just say, "Aw, you two are finally agreeing on something." And they both look at each other and walk away. MK would be investigating Julia from the tents, suspicious about her behavior. Jake and Tom would get even closer, not dating yet, but they would still be great friends. Will would kind of be scared of the weather, and Ellie and Z would kind of just be doing their own things. Rhea tells Rosa Maria more about her failing acting career, and Rosa tells her that she doesn't need to be famous, she just needs to be happy in life, which Rhea appreciates, and Rosa also opens up to her about her teen pregnancy and her being single mom. Millie and Priya would be evolving their friendship, Priya opening up about her parents, and Millie would be listening while writing in her notebook. The morning comes and they race, and the Gophers would get there first and they would cheer, saying that they won another and that the Bass really suck. Then the Bass arrives sad, and Sean shows up battered and bruised after everyone, making his team lose. And in a pretty unanimous vote, Sean is eliminated. Time for the Phobia Factor episode. Tom's fear would be removing his mask, which he fails. Jake's fear would be being in a graveyard, which he fails. Ellie's would be swimming with the sharks, which to her team's surprise, she passes. Julia's would be old people, which she passes. MK's fear would be being arrested by the cops, which she somehow passes. Will's would probably just be DJs with the snake, and he passes. Z's would be not chill, which Z's fear would be to be not chill, which he would fail. So it's 4 passes, 3 fails. On the Gophers would be made to on the Gophers, Tess would be made to reveal that she takes her pills, which is a major surprise to Tess and Trent. Trent says that she supports her, which he thanks, and Hunter says that he'll always make sure she has some, which she finds a bit weird, but thanks. Hunter in confessional saying Hunter would have a confessional saying that take that Trent, and Trent would have something saying that it would absolutely suck if Hunter and Tess got together, but as long as she's happy, he's fine with it. Tess passes, by the way. Trent would be the mimes like in canon, which he passes. Hunter's would see Trent and Tess quiz, but she would do it quickly and tells him not to get any ideas while she blushes. Hunter is able to keep it together and he passes. But then he punches the cameras in the confessionals. Heather's would be the sumo wrestler, which she passes, and Priya's would be standing up to her parents, which they bring her parents for, and she fails, saying there's nothing to stand up for. Millie's would be revealing her notebook, and she fails, saying that it's private. Noah's, I think, would be dolls. I just don't really think he liked dolls or or eels, and he would pass. And in a 5-4, the Gophers would win the challenge. I'm skipping Rosa, Rhea, and Dan's because they don't really matter. The Gophers win either way. And Jake, Ellie, and Tom would vote Z due to him failing and not being the best player, especially since his fear was literally just to not be chill. Julie and MK would vote Tom due to him being in a duo with Jake. And Z and Will would vote Jake due to Julia telling them to vote either Jake or Tom. But they split it up and Z got out. So, for the first part of the challenge, Hunter would be super eager to go with Tess, and Trent and Tess would just wave see you later to each other. Heather would force Trent to go with her, and he would just get angry for the diary, saying that it was private and none of her business. She just says that he better watch his mouth or he's out next. Millie and Priya would go together and just be besties doing it, along with Rhea and Rosa, and Dan and Noah. Tess would sort of just be trying to do the challenge, but Hunter would be talking to her all the time, and she would eventually just find the courage to talk to him about everything with the diary. She says that he's been sweet, but too talkative lately, and he says that he's just worried about her and Trent. She says that they aren't dating, and that she should be allowed to talk to other people if she wants. She says she still likes him, it said so in her diary, but she's starting to lose and gain feelings, and not in your favor. Hunter says he's sorry and he'll try to be better, which she appreciates, but says don't get your hopes up. He just looks down with a frown. Tom and Jake would be able to make the fire like they did in Canon, and Dan would use his glasses and make the Gophers fire. And they would end up finishing their fires at the same time. Julie tells Will and Tom to push the canoe, and they end up winning the challenge due to that extra boost. Most of the team except Dan would vote out Noah since he's a drag on the team, and he's not very useful in challenges. At the end of the episode, Trent and Tess would meet up at the dock, and Trent would play a song for her. Okay, so for episode 9, the hunters on the Gophers side would be Tess, Trent, Hunter, Millie, and Priya, and the deer would be Heather, Rosa, Rhea, and Dan. The hunters on the bass would be Ellie, MK, and Will, and the deer would be Tom, Jake, and Julia. Heather would be bossing and nagging around Millie and Priya, and Trent, Tess, and Hunter would just be traveling together. Tess would be trying to get Hunter and Trent to be friends, but it wouldn't really work and they'd continue fighting. In confessional, Tess would say that having two people fight over her isn't going to be easy to manage. Rosa, Rhea, and Dan would be traveling together since Dan needs new allies and he's kind of sad Noah is gone. Millie would have to be for Millie. Sorry, uh, Millie would be forced to get chips from Heather, but they would be the wrong flavor, so Millie would return. And when Dan would ask to have the chips, he would get them because Millie's tired of Heather. And then after Millie leaves, a bear shows up and mauls Dan, making him a medevac. But before the episode ends, Tom and Jake get their antlers stuck together, and Jake would pull down Tom's mask and give him a kiss, and they would start dating. But Tom would pull up his mask and tell him to please not lift his mask because he doesn't like people seeing his face and his scars. At the end of the episode, Dan is wheeled away by Rosa, saying sorry you had to be taken out and better luck next time. Okay, so for the episode 10 cooking challenge, I'm gonna say that Heather and Julia would be the main chefs, and I need them to make the same meals as in canon, since I have no clue on what Heather or I mean about what Julia would make her team do. I think Millie would blow up the flambe since she's been seen to be really bad at challenges, and yes, she's smart, but we don't know anything about her cooking ability. Like, if it was Damien, I would say, yeah, he would do it well, since, actually, no, he would definitely blow it up. Look what he did with the chemicals in his audition tape. Yeah, I think Millie would blow up the flambe. And Hunter and Tess, I think, would have a fight, messing up the ribs, making them lose the challenge. And I think, and it would due to the flambe almost killing Chris, and the ribs not really being good. And I think the fight would mainly be about Tess and Trent, since I think they would be bonding throughout the challenge, since they would be a duo, and Hunter and Tess wouldn't really be a duo. I don't think. Maybe they're like the duo of three, and Trent still gets knocked out by the concussion, with the oranges, even though I don't think Owen would do that, since Owen isn't here. But yeah, they would just have a huge argument messing up the ribs. Okay, so um, sorry, one second. Heather, Priya, and Millie would all vote out Rosa. Rhea would vote out Millie since she messed up the flambe. Rosa and Tess would vote Heather. Hunter and Trent would vote each other since they hate each other, leading Rosa to have the most amount of votes. But Rhea gives herself up for Rosa, saying that she was the best friend she could ever have, and she says good luck. They would hug before Rhea leaves, and Rosa would cry as she goes. Okay, this is like a decently long episode thing, so expect a couple mess ups. So for this challenge, I would have everyone paired up based on who Chris would pair each other up with. For the first challenge, I would have Ellie climbing and Will holding her up. And for the Gophers, Tess climbing and Heather holding her up. Okay, so Will would be doing well holding up since he's pretty strong, but Tess would be able to climb better and she's more agile. Heather would basically do the same thing that she did in Canon to Gwen, which Trent and Hunter both look away to be respectful. But that's 1 point for the Gophers since she still wins. For the eating challenge, it would be Hunter cooking for Trent and Tom cooking for Jake. Hunter would make what Lindsay did just intentionally, and Tom would cook Jake's perfectly, winning them a point, making it game point. For the apple shooting, I think it would be Rosa hitting Priya and MK hitting Julia. Rosa would have trouble, but MK would willingly throw the challenge because, like I said in an earlier episode, MK has been studying Julia's moves and she's been suspicious about her nice behavior. So the Bass would lose his challenge, and I think MK would be able to convince Jake, who would tell Ellie and Tom to vote out Julia, and MK would send Julia packing. Alright, so like I said for another episode, this episode is very, very long, I'm pretty sure. So episode 12, the boot camp challenge. In the first part, I think Millie would stop holding up the canoe first, since she is really lazy and super not challenge oriented, and Priya would be shown visibly annoyed due to her incompetence. During the writing essay thing, Trent would fall asleep, and right after, Hunter would slide near Tess trying to talk to her, but she would be annoyed since she at one point she really enjoyed their company, but now she's just annoyed with all their fighting, and she's worried she'll have to choose. In fact, no, she says she really likes Hunter, but she also really likes Trent, and she would start to question everything that's going on. I think Hunter would also fail the essay part due to him talking to Tess, and I think MK and Elliot also fail due to not having as much motivation as others. I think in between these rounds, since I'm pretty sure there were a couple rounds we didn't see or observe, Rosa Maria, Heather, and Will would get out at this time. And during the hanging thing, I think Priya would be doing the best until she sees Millie get hurt by something, and then she would fall off. Tom and Jake would be doing well, but I don't think Jake could hold on forever, so he would fall. But then Tom would catch him, and since he's only hanging on with one hand, he would slip off. Trent would run up to Tess, hugging her as she gets off since she won, saying that she did an amazing job. As she blushes in the confessional with a slight smile, saying that she's super conflicted, but she just wants both of them just in her life. Jake, Ellie, and Tom would be voting for MK, and Will would also vote for her, but MK would rig the votes against Jake, saying that Jake keeps Tom and Ellie as an alliance, and with him gone, that alliance falls apart. Ellie and Tom would say goodbye to Jake, and Tom reveals his face and kisses Jake before he goes, but it's off screen. Ellie and Jake hug, and she says that he will be missed. Okay, so for the diving out of a plane and onto a couch part, I think it would be Will and Trent, since it was DJ and Trent in the original. Trent would end up barely able to compete like in canon since he'd fall on an outline in the ground, and Will would get crushed on the couch, but that would still equal the point for the bass. For the moose riding, I decided on Tess and MK. I think Tess has been pretty hardened throughout the competition, and she's been pretty good at challenges, but MK is a pretty weak competitor, and I imagine her flying off pretty hastily. And for the final part with the mud skiing challenge, it would be Ellie versus Hunter, and I think Hunter would be able to do it pretty well. And with Heather versus Tom, I think Tom would be doing great until Heather tries to cut him loose and her top flies off. Tom would let go and cover his eyes, and it would technically make the bass lose since he didn't collect all the flags and reach the finish line. At the elimination, since Tom and Ellie aren't really great friends, I think MK could persuade Tom to vote Will to vote Tom. So Ellie would be voting MK, Will would be voting Tom, and MK and Tom would be voting out Will, sending Will home. Alright, so in episode 14, this episode still just. Well, it wasn't filler in the original. But this episode would probably just be filler since it's 7 girls to 3 guys left. But it would mainly just be everyone interacting. The girls and guys would still be in their cabins alone. More Hunter Trent fights, less a lot of Hunt test shipping bait and Trent test shipping bait. And the episode would mainly be about them and mainly just Tess having major struggles. This builds up to later episodes in the. Alright, so in this episode, it would begin with Julia and Noah rejoining, to everyone's surprise. During the challenge, Trent and Tess would be talking a lot, which would upset Hunter. And at the end of the challenge, because I'm not going over everything, but it would end up with the final two of Julia and Priya, since we've seen that they can both be monsters. Julia beat up a dinosaur, with her words. So I think she could easily just destroy the Sasquatch and Aqua, and I think she could win. I think she would convince the basically all of the old members of the Bass, Heather's Alliance, and Tess to vote out MK, saying that she's done so much, and she would reveal to Tom that she rigged the votes against Jake, making him like probably talk to other people to vote out MK. And Heather would realize the strategy and would walk up to Julia, asking for an alliance. But Julia refuses, saying that she would never ever have a partner like her. Only has 128 followers. And the episode would end with Heather just mad, saying that she's going to take out Julia however she can. Okay, episode 16. The episodes start with Tess drawing while Trent swimming, since we know that Tess likes art, since she is in art school in Disventure Camp All Stars, and basically having the same reaction, or not reactions, interactions that Gwen and Trent did in the beginning. Trent would get the piranha thing where he has to jump to the piranhas. Tess would get the skunk. Hunter would get the ring of fire. Heather would get Chef's fridge. Priya would get the snake. Noah would get the like alligator bridge thing that we only see in one scene that Lashana does in the original. Millie would get the bees. Elle would get the bear. Rose would have to get in the toilets, and Tom would have the tree. Oh, and Julia would get the whatever Bridget got. It wasn't on the wiki, and I didn't want to rewatch the episode. All right, so since Heather got in the original, it doesn't matter. She gets it here still, since she has the same key. Um, Trent would still help Tess with her clue, and she would give him a kiss, and they would start dating. But Hunter would be standing near them, like Tess and Trent wouldn't see him, but he would be standing near them with flowers. And this whole episode, he would just be neglecting getting his key because he would be like setting up, kind of like how Dave set up a picnic in Pocket Island, just setting up the perfect date for Tess so he could ask her out. But it would fail when he sees Tess and Trent kiss. But before she can see Hunter, Hunter just runs away to Heather, and he says that he wants to work with her. He basically tells her to do what she did to Trent and Tess in the original. She would be confused, but she would be happy to break them up and send Trent home. So Tess, one second. All right, so Heather would kiss Trent, and then Tess would show up, and then Tess and Trent would like hit the ground a lot for some reason, and basically, since Heather has immunity, I think that Hunter would like be going up fake nice to Tess, and Tess would basically just tell Hunter in tears, and Hunter would take advantage of this and go to everyone else, saying that they need to eliminate Trent. But after Trent gets eliminated, and this is after like Trent's gone, Trent and Tess have like talked about it. They've made up. They're still dating. Um, Heather would throw Hunter under the bus, saying that it was his plan to do this, and Tess would be furious. Tess would blow up at Hunter, and he would just be trying to defend himself, saying that Trent was a jerk and that they could have had a perfect relationship together. Tess calls him a creep, and then and then basically the episode would end with Heather having a confessional, tongue twister, like what? Basically Heather has a confessional saying that the plan went perfectly, and now two of my threats are already off the board to their because they're going to be arguing like hell. All right, so episode 17, the hide and seek. I'm gonna just say this right off the bat. Tom's winning immunity. Tom is like in canon, he is a spy. Um, Speaking of Tom's spyness, I'm cutting that out of the story. It does not fit for a total drama season. It fits for Disventure Camp, but it doesn't really fit for total drama. And I am deciding to take a break from the love triangle because I really I wrote 16 episodes of basically only love triangle. So yeah, it would mainly be Ellie and Tom, gaining back their allyship, I guess. Because ever since Jake left, Ellie and Tom have kind of just been not like avoiding each other, but they haven't really been talking to each other. And Rosa Maria would be warming up to them since she has zero allies. And I think they would also bring in Julia since they don't like her, but since she's evil and they know that now. But they decide that they need an extra number. And they would form an alliance in the cave, and so no one would know. Tess, I know I said I wouldn't talk about them much, but Tess and Trent get caught immediately. They're fighting all the time. Hunter would be incorporated in Heather's alliance, and Tom and Heather would win immunity since Heather would do that thing where she finds like people on the roof. I think in this universe it would be like Ellie or Rosa Maria. No, it would be two people, so like Ellie and Rosa Maria. I think they would go up there together, and then basically just um not letting Millie or Priya get one of them. Like Millie and Priya would play rock paper scissors until Heather just says that she's getting both. So yeah. So I think the target here would be Noah, since he's smart and he's the only outsider. He only really survived the past two rounds due to Heather kissing Trent and Julia telling everyone to vote out MK. And he would be a recognized schemer and a target. Tess and Hunter would vote each other. Noah would probably know that he's going, but he doesn't really care. He never really puts in the effort to strategize. Like, well, he does, like, when it's with, like, Alejandro and stuff in World Tour. But I don't think, since he doesn't have Dan, if there was Dan here, I think he would. But I don't think he really cares that much. So, yeah, Noah goes out. I don't really think he would care too much. Julie and Heather would glare at each other, making each other know that they are in danger. Okay, episode 18. So, for the challenge, I'm going off who I think is the best bike rider to make it to round two. And I think it would be Heather, Julia, Ellie, and Tom. I think Ellie would crash first since she's not a great bike rider. She definitely make it to round two, I feel like, but I don't think she would be amazing. She's not really an athlete. Next, I think Ellie would crash, or not Ellie, Tom. I think Ellie would crash since I don't really think Tom would be great at bike riding. I don't think he's like super agile and stuff, especially not in this universe. So it would be Julia versus Heather, the climactic battle. And in the race, Heather would ram into Julia right before the finish line, and Julia would get right back up and pedal, and she would just brag that that Ellie was a good player, but she's done now until it's revealed that Julia is actually out, and she goes ballistic and pounces Heather until Chef would pull her off, then put her on the boat as she screams, and Heather just laughs while she goes. Okay, episode 9. For this episode, I I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Ellie would be the first picked off. Rosa would be about to get like killed, but Ellie would push out of the way, and Ellie would just protect her because she thinks it's real. So like she's basically sacrificing her own life in her mind because she knows Rosa is a teen mom and doesn't want her kid to live without a mother. So she would be picked off. Then Millie would be killed since she would be writing in her notepad about everyone and get killed from behind. Priya would be running in to check on her, and she would try her best to fight the killer, and I think would actually be kind of decent, but she would still get kidnapped and brought back to the area. Hunter and Tess wouldn't be giving rules since I think they would actually watch horror movies, but they would just be arguing in the kitchen and they would get captured. Next, you would get Heather since he would like find her, then she would basically just run and end up in the like fucking tent thing. Uh, uh, Next, she would go for Tom. Sorry, I wrote it as Tome in my script, so I was confused a bit. Next, she would go for Tom since Rosa would be in the mess hall getting a sandwich, but Tom would just beat up Chef and head to the tent with his mask. Next, the real killer, who's on the island for some reason, would go to Rosa about to actually murder her, but she kicks him in the nuts and then slaps him, and he would just walk away saying that he wishes he was in prison now, giving her and Tom immunity, but not really because it's not an elimination challenge. And Chris would say that it's Ellie. Ellie'd be shocked, saying that Hunter and Tess were literally just arguing the whole time, but Chris would say that not only do they have drama, but he wouldn't say that he would play it off as they lived longer and they stuck together. And since Ellie was first out, plus she sacrificed herself, she would get the boot. Tom would say goodbye, and Rosa would give her a hug, and Rosa and Ellie would hug before Ellie goes bye bye. All right, episode 20 for the Animal Capture Challenge. I think Heather would realize that Final Four is soon, and she thinks she needs to ditch her allies because Hunter is a strong competitor, and so is Priya, and she just generally doesn't like Millie, I feel. So I think at the beginning of the challenge, she would reveal all the stuff Millie wrote. Then she would cause more drama between Hunter and Tess, which wouldn't be hard. And they'd argue, making all four of them not capture the animals. I think Rosa and Heather would catch it before time runs out, along with Tom, but the other four don't. I think Rose would vote Heather, Tess and Hunter are obviously voting each other, and Millie and Priya would also vote each other. Heather would convince Tom to vote Rosa since she's a pretty good competitor, nice and popular, and that literally got saved from certain death by someone else. Tom would agree, but he wouldn't feel good about it, and in like a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 2 vote, Rosa is eliminated. Tomlin said that he didn't want to do it, but he had to since someone's got to go. And Millie and Priya are still arguing, so they're not great competitors. Same with Tess and Trent. And after this, I think Heather would sort of make a kind of like how she made an alliance with Duncan in Final Seven. She would make a solo alliance with Tom, and yeah, Rosa would be out. Episode 21. So Chris would obviously put Priya and Millie and Hunter and Tess in the duos. So that would leave Tom and Heather. And there's literally no shot. I don't think Priya would be so angry that she just wouldn't be doing the challenge. Millie sucks at challenges. And Hunter is already shown to argue a lot with Allie in Spencer Camp All Stars. And they're dating. So I feel like he would just argue more with Tess. So yeah, they would win immunity. Tess and Priya would vote each other, of course, along with Tess and Hunter voting each other. So they would get one vote each. But Heather would convince Tom to vote Priya since Tom and Heather are in an alliance still. And Priya is probably the strongest competitor out of those four. So she would just say that Priya needs to go since she could just get her way to the end if no one eliminates her now. So yeah, Priya is eliminated, and no one would really say goodbye to her since she doesn't really have any allies in this game. She only had Millie, and Millie's gone. Or friends, I mean. And well, I think Heather would say goodbye, but Priya would just get mad at her and walk onto the dock, saying that she's sorry to her parents, like on the boat. Kind of like how we saw Tyler on the boat after, and he like shed a tear. That could like also work for Priya. All right, we're getting into the final five. Episode 22. All right, since there's no Katie and Sadie, no one would fuck up the voting process, like where everyone is saying stuff. But Priya, well, I feel like would just be screaming Millie's name over and over again. So I think Millie's out no matter what, especially since she wrote like shit talk about everyone. So yeah, it's kind of no contest. Millie is out pretty easily. Final four, episode 23. So I don't really think anything will really happen since everyone is smart. So I think this would also kind of like Brunch discussing this, mainly just be filler to see how our final four is doing. And Tess would just get tired of arguing with Hunter. And basically she would just tell her, or she would tell Hunter that she's tired of this and she's not going to waste her breath arguing with her anymore. So, Tom and Heather's alliance would end because Tom would get angry and wouldn't like how he's been playing since he got out Rosa, who was one of his allies before, and he just doesn't like what he's been doing. So their alliance would end, and that would mainly be all of the substance for this episode because there's no elimination. All right, episode 24. The partners would be Hunter and Tess, and Tom with Heather, of course. They can produce the most drama because it wasn't stated that it was guys and girls. It was just kind of like, all right, you two are partners, because that put it with the most drama. So yeah, Hunter would kind of be trying to argue. Like Tess already told him, but he would just kind of like, because he would still be mad about her and Trent dating, but I think Tess would just tells him that it isn't worth it, and she just walks away. Tom and Heather, I think they could work together. Tom and Heather, I think that they can put their feelings aside of hatred towards each other, and I think they can win the game. Or, like, the challenge. I don't know why I said game. But, yeah, I think they could realistically win the challenge. And Hunter or Tess, the love triangle officially ends in this episode. I know you guys are so sad. It's okay. I'm there for you. But, all right. The love triangle finally ends. Who is placing fourth? Well, I think that Chef would eliminate Hunter because I feel like Chef and Tess's personalities are pretty like amicable to each other's, and Tess did win the like boot camp challenge, and Hunter didn't even do the essay, so I think he would eliminate Hunter, and Hunter would say bye to Tess, saying that even though they weren't on great terms, he still enjoyed like the time they had as friends, which sort of confuses Tess, but she just says that it was the same for her, I guess. And then Hunter leaves satisfied. It's official. We only got two more episodes. All right, episode 25. Tom and Tess. Okay, Tom and Tess. I think they have more willpower than Heather. That's what I'm going to say right off the bat. Plus, they both hate Heather. So, they could easily team up and basically eliminate her. So, yeah, Heather is eliminated. Also, that's a good thing because you don't need Heather in the finale of Island. But yeah, so instead of Lindsay's dare, and like Millie and Priya don't. Well, Millie hates Heather, but I think Priya would actually be on decent terms with Heather since Priya doesn't understand that Heather was doing a bad thing to her by revealing the notebook. Well, it wasn't really a bad thing because she was kind of just revealing that Millie's a shitty person. But Millie, like, is a grown person that she says. I don't know what tangent I'm going on. I'm really sorry, but yeah. Instead, it would be Julie's dare since Julia hates Heather a lot. So yeah, and then Julia would, instead of cutting off Heather's hair, it would give her a mullet, kind of like Julia got in the reboot of Total Drama Reboot Season 2. And Heather would get in the boat, kind of just screaming like she did in the original. And Tess and Tom would be ready to face off in the final two. And they would get ready for the finale. Only one more episode. This took a while to make. Thanks if you got this far. Okay, it's finale day. And first, I'm going to be going over all the supporters. Heather would probably support Tom due to hating Tess more. Uh, Julia would support Tom because I don't think she would like Tess either. Her personality is like, I think Julia just wouldn't like Tess. Jake would support Tom due to them dating. Rosa would support Tom due to them like being an alliance. Rhea would be there because of Rosa. Priya would be there for Heather since they're kind of friends. Oliver, Leonard, Scarlett, Anne Maria, Sean, and Z would all be there because they didn't really have time to form bonds, but they think Tom is the more deserving winner. Will would support Tom since they were on the same team and he thought he was cool. And Ellie would support Tom due to them being friends. Trent would support Tess because they're dating. Hunter would support Tess because even though they were arguing after Trent left, he's still in love with her. Dan and Noah would support Tess due to having a more amiable personality to sorry. One second, let me scratch back on that. Dan and Noah would support Tess due to them just generally thinking that Tess is not only a more deserving winner, but a less annoying person. MK would support Tess for the same reason, and Millie would support Tess as a fuck you to Heather. Now in Tom versus Tess, Trent would still be doing the same Boulder thing to the same results as Gwen, but I think, and they would be interacting mostly the same, with like Gwen kind of like, it was like kind of hard to impress her because he was just carrying a boulder around. I don't know what he was doing. Um, but I think Tess is generally more chill and forgiving, so I think it would kind of just be norm. It would kind of be less hostile. Plus, Jake would be traveling with, like, he would be walking with Tom. Alright, Tom would definitely be able to get the pole first and be in the middle of the plank when Tess gets there exhausted. Tom would feel a little bad, but Trent on the other side would be cheering on Tess, and Tess would start running, and so does Tom. Tess would almost get there until Ellie decides she needs to do something to help Tom, and here is where the alternate endings happen. She picks up a boulder and chucks it at Trent to throw Tess off. In Tom's ending, it's about Tess is about to cross the finish line, but the boulder hits Trent in the head, causing her to look back and run over to help him as Tom crosses the finish line. But in Tess's ending, it actually hits Jake in the face and makes Tom stop as Tess crosses the finish line. Though personally, I think Tom's ending would be the canon one, since I think Ellie would have a decent throwing arm and accuracy, and Tom feels like the more deserving and better winner to me, even though I like Tess more. It would, and everyone would be cheering, and Tess would be like clapping, but she would be helping up Trent since he just got hit in the face with the boulder. She gives Tom a handshake, saying that he earned it. And in Tess's ending, I'm going over this because I want to. Dan, Noah, Hunter, MK, Millie, and Trent, that was really fast, I'm sorry, would cheer for Tess. And in both endings, they would talk about throwing a party. And also, Trent would do the same thing where he picks up Tess and do the same thing in both endings this time, because that's just a really wholesome thing. I really like that. And Trent and Tess would officially be dating now. Happy ending for all. So yeah, if you sat through this like 40-minute video, then thanks a lot. This took me this script took me like 2 weeks to write. Half out of laziness, half out of inexperience. But yeah, if you like this, you should press the subscribe button down there. I won't say this all the time, I promise. I'm not trying to peer pressure you. I'm sorry. But yeah, and if you like the video, then maybe you could comment that you like the video. That would make my day. But yeah, thanks for watching now. Goodbye.